You are Locked On Bulls Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Chicago on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Bulls Postcast here. My name is Joe George. You find me on Twitter at Joe George Radio. Thanks for checking us out. Here to recap the Bulls win over the Philadelphia 76ers, 142-110. Today's show is sponsored by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So the Bulls win this game in easy fashion, a game in which they're up by 50 points, set a season best in points scored in the first quarter with 39, then outdid themselves with 40 points in the third quarter. We saw a bunch of really good things from this game. The Bulls were just simply out-tanked by the Philadelphia 76ers. This game feels like it's going to have some implications for what the rest of the season can be. We've been talking on this show about you might need Brooklyn to be the team that passes you if you don't want to be a play-in team, because Philadelphia sucks. There's really no other way to put it. The 76ers are a terrible basketball team, and that was on full display in this game. So we'll talk about that. Interesting comment made from Stacey King and Adam Mean, discussion being had on the broadcast tonight about building a core group of players. So in a win like this, I kind of want to take a look at not just what we saw in tonight's game, but where this roster stands as it is and what was really the roster we thought we were going to see after the trade deadline. We'll do our best and worst and our Tankathon / plan update at the end of the show. As always, hit that subscribe button. We're here live after every single Bulls, Cubs, Bears, Notre Dame football game, as well, not just to the YouTube channel to Locked On Sports Chicago, but also to wherever you get your audio, Apple, Spotify, whatever. Get the Locked On Bulls audio feed. That's where our podcast audio drops as well. So let's talk about tonight's game. The Bulls win this one in easy fashion, 142-110. They outscored the Philadelphia 76ers 39-30 in the first quarter. Like I just said, that was their season high points in a quarter. They outdid themselves in the same game, scored 40 points in the third. That's really where the game got totally out of hand. They were up by quite a bit, obviously, at halftime, but they outscored the Philadelphia 76ers 40-18 in the third quarter. That's really where this game got away from Philly, a team that is just lost. They are a lost basketball team. As was mentioned on the broadcast night, the Philadelphia 76ers came into this season with the fourth best odds to win the NBA championship this year. The fourth best odds. They are currently the 11th seed in the Eastern Conference. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're going to have to shut down Joel Embiid. So what are you going to learn from this game? Well, the first thing you're going to learn is where you're at in the play-in standings. You were a half game up on Philly coming in. Now you're a game and a half up. As we're doing this live, we're waiting for Brooklyn's game to wrap up to figure out what their implications will be with this Bulls victory tonight. But takeaways from this game. Josh Giddy came into this game, last two games before this, averaging 25.5 points. He scores another 25 points in this game. 16 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 blocks, a steal. I really feel like the block and steal number doesn't do this game justice, or the 25 points for how well Josh Giddy played. He is playing his best basketball. His third straight game with 20-plus points. First time he's ever done that as a Bull. I can't imagine he's honestly done that much in his career. To be honest with you, I bet you this is the second or third time at best he's done this in his career. He's playing great basketball. When you talk about the idea of Josh Giddy and building around him, instead of a guy like Kobe White, who we'll talk about in a little bit as well, and his performance tonight, this is kind of what you have to sell me on. This is what Josh Giddy can be. Not just the, trailing three that he hit at one point in the game, but the way he was attacking the bucket constantly and aggressively and doing all these different moves, whether it's a spin move or just driving right past guys who are playing terrible defense and are showing that they quit. And I said this, one of the shows recently. So I want to reiterate. This is where, even as a Bulls fan, and I want them to tank, I want to be a little bit of appreciative of what the players are doing in this game specifically. You look at what Philadelphia did tonight. They came in, they didn't try. They didn't care. Their season's cooked. They know it. They're lost. Nick Nurse isn't even, being Nick Nurse like we know he can be on the sidelines. I do appreciate that this team isn't just going to roll over and die this season. And yes, is it going to potentially hurt their tanking chances? Yes. Is it going to make things harder to get the number 1 pick or top 3 pick in the lottery? Yes. But would I rather watch this team compete like this tonight than be a Philadelphia 76ers fan right now? Absolutely. I would rather be wanting to have a conversation about what can Josh Giddy be for this team going forward. How does he work with Modest Buzelis? What are we seeing from guys like Julian Phillips and Dalen Terry? What are we seeing from new players like Kevin Huerter? Than a team that completely embarrassed themselves and just didn't try an entire NBA game in which people invest their time in. I mean, even the fans there are booing at the end. I can't even believe they have fans showing up to the way, to their games the way that Paul George and company have played this season. But back to the Bulls, Morley. Josh Giddy played great. Kevin Huerter set a season high for threes. He ended up with 7 in the game. His career high is 8, so he shot crazy. He's now hit, I think that's 14 or 15 threes in his last 3 games as a member of the Bulls, where he was terrible to start. So this is kind of like when you brought him in, you want to bring a shooter to the roster to make things a little bit easier on the offense, to continue to see like what pieces fit where. This is what you were expecting when you brought in Kevin Huerter. Not to try to win, but what does Josh Giddy and Modest Buzelis, what does this core young group of players look like with someone that can shoot the ball really well? Kevin Huerter's giving this some insight. I did, in this game, find myself a little annoyed, though, because I enjoyed watching this game of what this roster should look like just as is, if not for all the injuries. Patrick Williams doesn't play, Vooch doesn't play, Io doesn't play, Lonzo gets a cut on his head, he only plays 8 minutes in the game. Like, this is the roster that we should have seen post-trade deadline, basically, where Zach Collins is at center, and you've got Kevin Huerter, you've got Trey Jones, and then you've got all the other guys who were here, and seeing what that group of players looks like as you start to look towards what the next wave of Chicago Bulls basketball looks like, with obviously some better draft picks on the way, because you think this team's going to not be very good for the next 2 or 3 years. Like, I know they're talking about cap space in 2 years. The Bulls are not going to be there in 2 years, but we saw tonight what we thought this team was going to look like post-trade deadline, and that's why I was actually really extra engaged in this game, because I was just kind of curious. Like, what would this team have done if they did the smart thing and trade Nikola Vucevic, since he was ruled out last minute with a calf injury? We also kind of a strange game with injuries, not just Lonzo leaving with a laceration to his head, but Kobe White. It's tweeted by the Bulls he's in the starting lineup. He also said he's not out there. No one's got any idea what's going on. They find out he's got a cut on his finger. It reopens at one point, so he leaves the game and then comes back in. So that was strange. But besides that, Kobe White played his normal amount of minutes. But I was just intrigued by this game. Kevin Huerter, again, shot the ball really well. Modest Buzelis, 1 for 6 from the three-point line. Like, obviously not his best, but he's doing something in this game which gives me even more hope for him for the future. And the idea of pairing him and Giddy together going forward is the cutting to the basket constantly that we saw. The one where Josh Giddey's driving to the lane to his right, and he basically just turns, throws it over his shoulder to Modest Buzelis, who's dunking. And as Stacey King said, looked like he had go-go gadget arms, how long his arm was extended. That was an excellent play. We saw multiple times this game, whether it was Giddy or someone else, finding Modest Buzelis just cutting to the hoop and attacking the rim. That's something we need to see more often. And you see moments where there's consistent shooting, of course. I still think, again, the adding weight is going to be a big part of what Modest Buzelis can be. We saw another attempt on a dunk tonight where he got stuffed as he got to the rim, basically, because he's just not big enough quite yet. But that, to me, was probably the most positive. Of all the things that happened in this game was just assuming Giddy and Buzelis are going to be the two guys that are on this team for a while going forward, because that's kind of where I'm at. Just with Giddy, it's kind of dealing with it. I mean, he's selling me right now on what he can be, but I'm not the biggest Giddy guy, if you've been listening to the show before. So if you're a first-time listener, thanks for checking us out, A. But B, not the biggest Giddy guy. But tonight, the passing we saw is why Josh Giddy could be a valuable piece to this team. And what we saw from Modest, again, just cutting to the rim, getting to the action, was really good tonight. And I just want to see more of that. I want to see more Modest Buzelis. Just the more minutes he can play, the better. I still don't even think it's absolutely insane to think that he could even make a run at Rookie of the Year, as crazy as it sounds. But Castle from San Antonio is coming off the bench, and he's the betting favorite right now to win Rookie of the Year. If Modest Buzelis were just to go off the remaining 25 games or whatever's left in the season, it doesn't even feel insane that that's out of reach for him at this point of the season, not just making all-rookie team like he set the goal for himself. So this was a good win against a team that didn't try. I guess it's a bad win if you're hoping for only tanks, but this is kind of what I expected out of this game. Philadelphia, again, has given up on their season, and Paul George continues to cement the fact that he has the worst contract in the NBA. Dalen Terry, nice block on Paul George too, that we saw in this game. So something that was mentioned on the broadcast that I want to get into next, the idea that it's not just about, getting the number 1 or 2 pick in the draft that Stacey King and Adam Mean were talking about. It's about building a core group of players so that when you do have cap space, that the city, the team that's there can attract guys to the Bulls roster, can attract people for some reason to want to play for this front office, which hopefully will not be here much longer. Unfortunately, feels like they will be. But are the Bulls building a core? Who, when you're watching this game tonight, with all the veterans missing, Io not included, who is actually part of this core as of right now after watching a game like this? You think about where the Bulls are going. We'll get to that next here on the Locked On Bulls postcast on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. NBA fans, get ready. They swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass, every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal the next day. It's simple. When any player scores, 50 or more in a game during the 2024-25 NBA regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. After an epic 50-game performance, you want to celebrate, get some wings, whatever you do, pizza, burgers, you can get 50% off up to 50% off your order, up to $10 with Dash Pass. Sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save. When any player scores 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off any order the next day, up to $10 off. Just use promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. All right, so the idea that the Bulls are building a core for the future, who's part of that core? I think a game like tonight gives you some hints, some ideas of what you have with this team. Because, look, they killed the 76ers. They're by 50 points. The Bulls shouldn't be up by 50 points on anyone this season, let alone a team that, again, was the 4th best odds to an NBA championship this year. But when Stacey King and Adam were talking about, and Adam and me were talking about that on the broadcast, it caught my attention. Okay, who is the core members of the Bulls that as they, yes, tank out this season, even though I think they're going to be a play-in team, unfortunately. Looking at what Philadelphia did in this game, I think the Bulls are going to end up as the 10th seed. I'm not quite sure if Brooklyn's going to catch them either. They might just be where they are at this point in the season, that they're just not going to have enough time to fall out of the race. And typically, you're going to have Vooch and all these guys back. But we know Vooch won't be here long term. We assume Lonzo won't be here long term. Patrick Williams probably stuck with. But you think about the core players you want to build around. And the reason why I think that this is a pertinent conversation after this game is because, again, Josh Giddy, it sounds like he's the guy they're going to build this team around at point guard instead of Kobe White. I do think Kobe White in these last couple games, and most of the season, but specifically the last couple games, with Giddy taking an elevated role and Modest becoming more part of the offense, I think Kobe White looks a little lost, just to be honest. I don't think it's totally lost out there, but it just doesn't feel like he fits as much in what this new group of players looks like. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's just a weird funk that they're going through, but it feels like post-All-Star break. Just a kind of a gut feeling, not like any X's and O's or numbers things I'm basing this on, but just watching the game, it feels like Kobe's just not as much of an emphasis in the offense as he was before. And honestly, I think that can be a good thing. I like Kobe White. I don't think he's, I think he would be incredible on a different team as the sixth man off the bench, really going out there for a team like the Lakers, just as an example. What he could do for a team like that, I think would be so much more impactful than what he can do here. Because Kobe is just not, to me, a guy that you look at, okay, can we build a championship team around this guy in 3, 4, 5 years? I think the answer is no. So who can you? Who can you build a core with from what we saw in this game? Modest Buzelis continues to me to check the boxes. Again, what he was doing tonight, just slashing to the rim constantly, I think just shows he's starting to figure out the game of basketball at the NBA level. He's so young, he's so raw, but I just feel like the scouting reports, maybe it's just the G League stuff was off a little bit with him. I think even though he's 1 for 6 from the three-point line tonight, I think the three-point shot is much better than it was led to believe with Buzelis. I think the dribbling is much better with Buzelis than what we were led to believe also. Just overall, I am more impressed with him the more playing time we see this season. And it feels like, there's a little bit of a miss here in the draft, and it might have benefited the Bulls in a major way. And I'm not going to go as far as like Kendall Gill saying that this is the Bulls' Cooper flag and they don't really need Cooper because him and Modest are essentially the same player. Like, I don't know if it's that, but, can you build around a guy like Modest and him being one of your 3 best players on the roster when eventually and hopefully this thing actually turns around for the first time since the Derrick Rose era basically ended? I think the answer is going to be yes. Now, it doesn't mean it's for sure going to happen, but can you attempt it? I think it's an easy yes. And then Josh Giddy, if he can find, this is very similar to the point totals were not the same, but the start of the season where he started off shooting the ball excellent. Like, the one thing I do like about Josh Giddy is when it's not a transition 3, I do appreciate that he will rip them because you have to you can't just be treated like Russell Westbrook, right? Like, you can't just be a guy that everyone's sagging 5-6 feet off of. They're basically in the paint at that point because they're not worried about you at all. They know you're not going to shoot. So for Giddy, I appreciate that he does take them. And when he plays like this and attacks the rim, it's really special. Like, it can be. It shows you the prospect that he once was. Like, you see the flashes. Again, to clarify, like, this is a team that quit for the Philadelphia 76ers. So, like, it's not some, like, these guys are going to be awesome. But it's more just, like, the idea of building a core. What do you have? The other guys who stood out, I think, in this game specifically, really one guy. And, look, I took this note, and he was 0 for 4 from the field. Julian Phillips is a player that's really growing on me. Now, what is he a core group of? He's a role player off the bench for sure. He's never a starter on a great basketball team, but is he a really good role player off the bench as hopefully this team adds more talent through the draft and eventually through free agency? I think he could be. And again, like, I'm still a Dalen Terry believer too in that same capacity of what Dalen can do. We saw some moments offensively, but we see him constantly when he's out there with effort on defense, where he's just consistently going and moving in the right direction of what you want a young basketball player to be. And of course, he's a guy that, both those two guys, specifically Terry and Phillips, have spent a lot of time this year in Billy Donovan's doghouse more than the rest. But this is why I wanted them to blow it up at the deadline, because this is what we should be watching every night, is the young players and what they build and what they could become versus what it typically was, which is Vooch, Patrick Williams, all these guys who were hurt, these veterans taking up roster spots when you don't, frankly, really want them out there. So I'm curious what we'll see going forward with the rotation, because we saw Zach Collins enter the starting lineup by necessity with both Jalen Smith and Vooch out. Thought he had some fine moments. Was really curious what Billy Donovan was going to do when he got his 4th foul with less than, a minute to go. A minute into the third quarter, he gets his 4th foul, I think it was. And Billy Donovan had to leave him out there because of where they were at roster-wise at this point. But again, like, I don't know if, not like a Zach Collins truther or anything like that, but I would have been curious what this team just would have looked like this season if they would have actually done the right thing at the deadline. So this was kind of a taste of that, of just the more, the veterans are out and hurt, we get to see the young guys play more and more and learn about this team. And I think this version of the Bulls that we saw tonight without the veterans, because they're all hurt, to me, is way more interesting at this point in the season than seeing Vooch out there at 35 or whatever he is play basketball. Like, I've been there, done that, seen it. So I'm way more intrigued if they can, just get these guys more minutes, if we're going to see rotations change as the veterans get back, if we see them take a step back the rest of the season, not just for tanking purposes, but it's for learning purposes. It's for learning, like, who is this roster going forward? Again, you're not going to learn anything when Patrick Williams and Vooch are out there, or even Jalen Smith. So with all them being hurt, I thought the rookies and the young guys did a good job taking advantage of at least some moments in tonight's game versus a team that is just terrible in the Philadelphia 76ers. All right, final segment of the show coming up next. Best and worst moments from this game. Don't think we'll have many worse. I have to go through my notes here during this break, but best and worst moments of the game, our play-in update and Tankathon update. We'll wrap up the show next year on the Locked On Bulls POSTCAST and the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip or want to bet on on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps everything up to the moment. I know exactly what's going on in the games. If I don't have it on my television, FanDuel app has it all covered for me. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook betting partner of the NBA. Best and worst moments of this game. Worst, I got nothing. In this game. There was a couple possessions that were really, really sloppy, but that feels like nitpicking on a night like this. I guess worst would be whatever is going on with Lonzo, but again, it's just a head laceration, so he'll be totally fine at this point. But best moments, I'll again go back to, the cutting action that we saw from Modest Buzelis constantly in this game. There's a possession here where I think the best moments to go more specifically with Josh Giddy and Modest is Josh Giddy. He's trailing. He hits a three to put the Bulls up 63-44. Within the next two possessions, Josh Giddy does that drive and dish to Modest Buzelis, who throws down a massive dunk in the game. And also Kevin Huerter, 7 3s in this game. He's all over the place. Like, this is the guy that we saw at times in Atlanta. This is a good piece. This is a good thing for the Bulls. Like, this is what you want from him the rest of the year. Again, part of the reason why I want to see the young players and the new guys play more is because that when you talk about a core group of players building for the future, Kevin Huerter in no way, shape, or form is a member of the Bulls in the future. He's just not. So if he can play like this, he starts to slowly turn into some kind of trade asset, you would hope, at the deadline, during the summer, like even before the deadline, obviously next year. Like, you can move him this offseason for some kind of draft capital if he plays anywhere close to where he has in the last 3 games, because teams always want shooting, and he's a guy that you can build, you can add into a trade package, and some veteran team that's trying to win can sell themselves on the idea of Kevin Huerter, being a good shooter. You know what? On a night like where the Philadelphia 76ers were terrible, I will reiterate how much I appreciate the Bulls just not quitting and not rolling over and die. And at least they're going to tank, like trying to make this as an entertaining product as possible for the Bulls fans that are still highly dedicated to this team, a team that should be out of the play-in tournament and just currently isn't. Like, it sounds moral victory-ish, but I'll take it. Like, I'd rather a team try than absolutely roll over and die like the 76ers are on a night-in, night-out basis. And, I'll give a shout-out to Zach Collins here. I think in his, stat as the starting center, the only real center on this roster tonight, he had some good moments as well for the Bulls in this game. So it was an interesting game tonight. Like, from the start, again, where Kobe White is in the starting lineup, and all of a sudden he's not, to the Bulls being up 50 in the fourth quarter. Like, they played good basketball tonight. They shot the ball really well. They attacked the rim as a team overall effectively, from Phillips to Terry to Modest to Giddy. They all did it, each kind of contributing in their own ways, and set a season high in points in a quarter. Dalen Terry tied a season high in points in a game. Kevin Huerter set a season high in threes in a game, nearly a career best for him and Dalen Terry in these games. So a bunch of good young players or good performances from these young guys in a Bulls victory. So it's not the tank win you want when you're trying to fall out of the play-in tournament, but the Philadelphia 76ers are doing you no help in this one. So the Bulls came into this game a half game ahead of the 76ers in the play-in standings and a full game ahead of the Brooklyn Nets. And the Brooklyn Nets lost their game, so they will be up a game and a half and a 2-game lead on the Brooklyn Nets right now. They currently still sit as the 8th seed, or the 8th lottery position, giving them a 6% chance to get the lottery. They are right there with Portland. At one point this season, a week ago, I guess I should say, I'll rephrase that, a week ago, I felt pretty confident that they were not going to fall back to 9 or 10. But Portland is, still right there. They're 6-4 in the last 10, where the Bulls are 3-7. But Wemby being out for the year for San Antonio does feel like it changes that a little bit. So, unfortunately for the Bulls, I do think there is a scenario now where they end up with only a 2% chance to get the first overall pick. It's going to vary between 9% chance and 2%. So it seems all over the place to where they can end up at this point in the season. So as we've been doing to wrap up every single show, really since the trade deadline, I guess this will be the fourth time we've done this. We'll do a Tankathon randomizer. So far we've done it 3 times. 2 times the Chicago Bulls have landed with the 9th pick, and the last time we did it, they ended up with the 4th pick in the NBA draft. So we hit sim lottery here, and the Bulls end up with the 9th pick again. So for the 3rd time out of 4 that we've done this. So that's the frustration with a win like this. Is when you think about tanking, losing to the Philadelphia 76ers would have been a much better outcome. And again, unfortunately for the Bulls, I really kind of feel like at this point, they're going to be a play-in team. I don't want them to be. I don't like anyone besides, I don't even know what the Reinsdorfs really want them to be a play-in team. It's not going to be a home game, so they're going to be on the road. So it's not like they get like a full United Center to sell one more game of tickets. Like, they're not going to sell play-in t-shirts. If they do, please don't buy them. Please do not support the Bulls in that way. Support them by watching content like this or the Locked On Bulls YouTube channel. But do not buy play-in t-shirts if they sell them, or hats this year. But yeah, this is where the Bulls are at this year. It seems really, I know it's only a small lead that you have, but Philadelphia and Brooklyn are not doing yourselves. I got the standings wrong. It's a game and a half up on Brooklyn. It's 2.5 games up on the Philadelphia 76ers after this win. So that's a big gap for a team that's about to shut down Joel Embiid the rest of the year. Look, it won't change the Bulls' play-in standings. They'll get knocked out by, or Atlanta or Miami in the first play-in matchup. But I think they're going to be a play-in team. So if that's what the Reinsdorf's goals were, to be a playoff team, I think the Bulls actually might check that box this year, unfortunately, for the fans. So that will do it for us. Thanks for checking us out. This is the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. We go live after every single Bulls game, Bears game, Notre Dame, and we'll be live after every single Cubs game as well, including bright and early after those 5 o'clock in the morning games in Japan. So hit that subscribe button. Thanks for checking us out, as well as the Locked On Bulls audio feed, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find our shows as well. They get uploaded to that basically as soon as this show wraps up. So thanks for checking us out. The Bulls win 142-110 over the Philadelphia 76ers. We will be back after the next Bulls game. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.